Hey everyone! Ready to dive deep into the world of Suburbicon, released on October 27, 2017. This film has sparked endless discussions, and today, we're uncovering every thrilling detail. If you enjoy this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us grow. And for more incredible movie explorations and hidden gems, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's unravel the magic behind this cinematic masterpiece. Released on October 27, 2017, Suburbicon arrived with a certain level of expectation. Directed by George Clooney, the film not only brought together a talented cast but was also written by the renowned Coen brothers, Joel and Ethan, whose distinctive style of dark humor and moral ambiguity was evident from the very first frame. It was a film that seemed to promise the perfect combination of suspense, social commentary, and a touch of the absurd. But Suburbicon is not just a simple thriller. Its layers are deep, its satire biting, and its subtext a mirror to some uncomfortable truths about American society. At first glance, the film might appear as a straightforward mystery, but as it unravels, it becomes something much more intricate, blending genres and emotions in a way that leaves a lasting impact on the viewer. What makes Suburbicon particularly extraordinary is its unsettling ability to turn the conventions of suburban life on their head. Suburbs are often depicted as the epitome of American life. Neat, orderly, safe, and ideal. But Clooney, along with the Coen brothers' sharp script, uses the backdrop of the 1950s suburban American dream to peel back the layers of this idealized world and expose the ugly truths beneath. At the heart of the film is the dichotomy between the outwardly perfect suburban landscape and the darkness simmering underneath. There is a sense of dread that slowly builds as the film progresses, constantly reminding the audience that not everything is as it seems. Suburbia, often seen as a symbol of stability, is revealed here to be a battleground for secrets, deceit, and violence. At its core, the plot of Suburbicon is driven by the murder of Rose Lodge, Julianne Moore, the wife of Gardner Lodge, Matt Damon, a seemingly normal man who lives with his son, Nicky, Noah Jupe, in this quiet suburban neighborhood. The film opens with the tragic event, a brutal home invasion in which Rose is killed, leaving Gardner to deal with the aftermath. At first, Gardner's reaction appears to be that of a grieving husband trying to hold his family together in the face of tragedy. But as the investigation unfolds, something much darker begins to emerge. While the murder investigation is ongoing, Gardner's life begins to unravel in unexpected ways. The arrival of his wife's twin sister, Margaret, also played by Moore, only adds complexity to the mystery. Margaret's presence seems harmless at first, but her appearance triggers a series of events that blur the lines between grief, guilt, and guilt-driven actions. The film's twists and turns challenge your expectations, leading you down a path where the true nature of the characters is exposed in startling ways. In a classic Coen brothers fashion, the viewer is left to question who is truly guilty, who is innocent, and who is just caught up in the tangled web of lies, manipulation, and survival. What elevates Suburbicon from a typical thriller to something extraordinary is the way it blends the personal with the societal. The murder mystery at the film's core is not just a simple plot device, but a way to explore larger issues about morality, identity, and the American dream. While the residents of Suburbicon appear to lead picture-perfect lives, there is an undercurrent of racism, classism, and violence that has been neatly hidden beneath the veneer of suburban bliss. The arrival of the Myers family, the first African-American family to move into the neighborhood, serves as a catalyst for the film's examination of prejudice and hostility in the 1950s. The violence and hatred that erupts from this simple act of integration are chilling, providing a stark commentary on the deep-seated racism that often lies just below the surface in idealized American settings. The film doesn't shy away from using dark humor to make its points. The Coen brothers' trademark wit is ever present, with moments of absurdity that serve as both a critique of the American suburban lifestyle and a commentary on human nature. There are times when the violence in the film becomes almost laughable because of how ridiculous the circumstances are, but this absurdity only adds to the tension. It's the same type of dark, ironic humor that the Coens are known for, and it works perfectly within the context of Suburbicon, heightening the tension and providing moments of relief before the next wave of discomfort. One of the most captivating aspects of Suburbicon is the performances. Matt Damon gives a haunting portrayal of Gardner Lodge, a man who is, at first, sympathetic and tragic, but whose actions soon reveal him to be far more morally ambiguous. Damon's portrayal is a masterclass in subtlety, drawing us into Gardner's personal hell while keeping us at arm's length. His performance, which spans a wide range of emotions from grief to guilt to cold calculation, is a driving force in the film, and his character's evolution is one of the most compelling aspects of the story. Julianne Moore, playing both Rose and her sister Margaret, brings an eerie duality to the film. As Rose, she is the loving wife, the picture of suburban perfection, until her murder shatters that image. As Margaret, she is more mysterious, her motivations unclear. Moore's ability to play both characters with such nuance and complexity adds layers to the story and helps keep the audience guessing. There is an unsettling quality to her performance that lingers long after the film ends. The supporting cast is equally strong, with Oscar Isaac bringing a level of sharpness and wit to his role as Bud Cooper, the private investigator hired to look into Rose's murder. His interactions with the lodges, especially Gardner, are filled with a sense of impending doom, and Isaac's ability to deliver his lines with a mixture of charm and menace adds to the overall tension of the film. Noah Jupe as Gardner's young son, Nicky, is another standout. His performance is heartbreaking as he navigates the horror of losing his mother and the confusion of what is happening around him. The visual style of Suburbicon is another standout feature. The film's 1950s setting is meticulously recreated, with attention to detail that captures the era's suburban idealism. The pristine houses, the perfectly manicured lawns, and the bright, almost artificial colors create a sense of nostalgia, but it's a nostalgia that feels increasingly hollow as the story progresses. The film's cinematography, by Robert Elswit, also plays with light and shadow to emphasize the growing sense of unease. The bright, idyllic surfaces of Suburbicon are contrasted with the darkness that lurks in every corner, visually representing the film's central theme, the ugliness hiding beneath the facade of perfection. When Suburbicon was released, it was met with mixed reviews, but that only added to its intrigue. Some critics appreciated the film's satirical edge and the way it dissected the concept of the American dream, while others found it disjointed or uneven. But one thing that everyone seemed to agree on was that Suburbicon was a film that dared to take risks. It took on tough subjects like racism, corruption, and the inherent violence in suburban life, all while maintaining the Coen brothers' signature dark comedy. In a time when American society seemed increasingly divided, the film struck a chord with audiences who saw its biting social commentary as both timely and thought-provoking. Suburbicon became a cultural phenomenon not just because of its star power or its connection to the Coen brothers, but because of its boldness. It used the familiar setting of the American suburb, a symbol of stability and success, and turned it into a reflection of America's darkest impulses. It made us question what lies beneath the surface of seemingly perfect lives and what happens when those illusions are shattered. It tapped into the growing sense of unease and disillusionment that many people felt about the state of the world, making it feel both relevant and unsettling. Ultimately, Suburbicon is a film that deserves to be explored in great detail because it's not just about the mystery of Rose's murder. It's about what that murder uncovers. It's about the lies, the prejudice, the corruption, and the violence that exists just beneath the glossy surface of suburban life. It's a movie that challenges its audience to look deeper, to question the things they've always accepted as truth, and to recognize the darkness that often lurks in the places we least expect. So, if you haven't seen Suburbicon yet, or if you've only seen it once, take the time to revisit it. There's more to this film than meets the eye, and every layer is worth uncovering. From the very first moments of Suburbicon, the film sets a tone of eerie normalcy. The film opens with a serene view of a picture-perfect 1950s suburb, where the houses are pristine, the lawns perfectly manicured, and the streets quiet, almost too quiet. The setting is idyllic, the embodiment of the American dream. Except, of course, for the undercurrent of tension that Clooney and the Coen brothers so deftly weave into the narrative. What seems like a familiar suburban paradise is anything but. It's a facade, one that will soon crack wide open. At the heart of Suburbicon is the tragic murder of Rose Lodge, Julianne Moore, a young mother and wife whose life is ripped away in an instant. The opening sequence, which introduces this family, gives us a glimpse of how charmingly ordinary their lives appear. The Lodge family, led by Gardner Lodge, Matt Damon, lives in this perfect little world, at least on the surface. The film starts with the kind of suburban rituals that feel like a time capsule from an era of false hope. Mothers bake pies, children play outside, fathers head to work. But the seemingly perfect world of the Lodges is soon shattered by tragedy. One night, the house is invaded by two masked men who kill Rose in a brutal, senseless attack during a robbery. Gardner survives, and in the aftermath, the perfect suburban landscape appears to be irrevocably disturbed. The film's subtle and sinister opening sets the stage for the film's central conflict, forcing the audience to question not just what happened, but why it happened. The murder itself, though shocking, feels like only the first domino in a much larger series of events that will slowly unravel the lives of everyone involved. In the immediate aftermath of Rose's death, we are introduced to the character of Gardner, the grieving widower who tries to maintain his composure amidst the chaos. At first, Gardner seems like any ordinary, tragic figure. He's calm, collected, and focused on looking after his son, Nikki, Noah Jupe, who is now left without a mother. However, the way Gardner presents himself is increasingly suspicious. His initial reaction to the death of his wife doesn't seem to match the gravity of the situation. There's a certain emptiness in his eyes, an eeriness to his demeanor, that hints at deeper, darker layers of his personality, ones we are only beginning to uncover. Enter Bud Cooper, Oscar Isaac, a private investigator hired to look into Rose's murder. Cooper quickly becomes a pivotal character in the story. He's sharp, observant, and a little too smart for his own good. He's determined to find the truth behind the murder, but as he digs deeper, it becomes clear that the case is more complicated than it seems. Bud's investigation acts as a mirror to the increasing tension in the film, offering the audience an outsider's perspective on the apparently perfect lives of the Lodges. His initial probing feels almost too casual, as if he's aware that something is terribly wrong but isn't quite sure how to proceed. Cooper's arrival signals a shift in the film's tone. Up until this point, we've been lulled into a false sense of security, but now the story begins to take on a darker, more ominous feel. Cooper's probing questions about the house's layout, about the timing of the robbery, and about the people involved start to pull at threads that Gardner doesn't want pulled. The tension between Gardner and Cooper grows, and with it, the suspicion that there's more to the story than a simple murder. As the investigation continues, we learn that the Lodge's seemingly perfect world isn't as straightforward as it seems. One of the most pivotal moments in the film occurs when Margaret, also played by Julianne Moore, Rose's twin sister, arrives in town shortly after the murder. At first, Margaret's appearance seems like a simple coincidence, a grieving sister coming to comfort her brother-in-law and nephew. But Margaret's role in the story grows increasingly unsettling. Her arrival isn't just a matter of familial obligation. It's a signal that the Lodge family is far from ordinary, and the murder of Rose might not be the isolated incident it initially appeared to be. Margaret, with her cool, almost too perfect demeanor, seems out of place. Her twin-like resemblance to Rose adds an uncanny layer to the film, suggesting that she's both a part of the family and something entirely separate. Her appearance brings with it a sense of displacement, and with her, a new set of questions emerges. Does she know more than she's letting on? Does she have a hand in Rose's death? Or is she merely a pawn in a much larger game? As the investigation into Rose's murder continues to unfold, so does the film's broader social commentary. In the backdrop of the murder mystery, Suburbicon also tells the story of the first African-American family to move into the neighborhood, the Myers family. Their arrival is met with hostility, fear, and violent resistance from the all-white residents of Suburbicon. This subplot is crucial because it creates a stark contrast to the murder mystery at the heart of the film, amplifying the simmering tension in the town and underscoring the theme of prejudice that runs through the narrative. The Myers family, led by the quiet and dignified Mr. Myers, moves into a house directly across the street from the Lodge family, and their arrival sets the stage for a violent and unsettling series of events. The local residents, armed with bigoted views and a sense of territorial ownership, treat the family as an unwelcome intrusion. The hostility directed at the Myers family is immediate, culminating in a series of violent confrontations. The film uses the neighborhood's reaction to the Myers' presence to highlight the inherent racism and xenophobia lurking just beneath the surface of suburban life. The way this plotline weaves together with the central murder mystery feels seamless yet deliberate. While the Lodge family deals with its internal chaos, the entire town is gripped by its own form of madness, one driven by fear, prejudice, and a profound sense of entitlement. The film cleverly contrasts the microcosm of the Lodge family's dysfunction with the larger, systemic issues plaguing the town. It's a reflection of how personal secrets can mirror societal flaws, showing that the seemingly peaceful suburban life is, in reality, a boiling pot of tension waiting to explode. The pivotal moment in the first half of Suburbicon comes when Gardner, in a shocking revelation, is revealed to have been more involved in his wife's murder than we initially thought. At first, he's presented as a victim, grieving and trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy for his son. But as more details about the murder are revealed, it becomes clear that Gardner was not just an innocent bystander. His calm demeanor begins to make sense in a much darker light. The more we see of Gardner, the more his cold, calculating nature is exposed. His earlier grief seems to have been nothing more than a well-crafted facade, one that hides the true extent of his involvement in the crime. This revelation marks a turning point in the film. Up until this moment, Suburbicon has carefully kept its cards close to its chest, leaving the audience to speculate on what might be happening behind the scenes. But now, with Gardner's dark secret revealed, the story shifts dramatically. His motivations are no longer a mystery. He's not simply a grieving husband trying to protect his family. He's someone far more dangerous, someone willing to go to extreme lengths to maintain his image and protect his interests. As the first half of Suburbicon nears its conclusion, the tension reaches a fever pitch. The film's carefully constructed sense of unease gives way to chaos as Gardner's actions grow more erratic and the town's simmering racism erupts into violence. The film's central mysteries begin to converge: Gardner's involvement in Rose's death, the escalating hostility toward the Myers family, and the shifting dynamics within the Lodge family. The stage is set for a final act that promises to pull all these threads together in a shocking and tragic conclusion. But even as the first half of Suburbicon ends, the true nature of the story has only begun to unfold. The dark comedy, the biting social commentary, and the growing sense of moral ambiguity all blend together to create a cinematic experience that leaves you both unsettled and fascinated. The film has established its themes: greed, racism, corruption, and the ugly truth behind suburban life, and has carefully set the stage for the explosive events that are sure to come. It's a film that leaves you asking not just what happens next, but why it happens. And, most importantly, it forces you to confront the uncomfortable truths that lie beneath the surface of the world we think we know. The second half of Suburbicon is where the tension that's been simmering throughout the first act truly begins to boil over. What initially appeared to be a straightforward murder mystery, laced with a dash of suburban satire, quickly spirals into a dark and chaotic descent into betrayal, violence, and moral decay. With every passing moment, the audience is pulled deeper into the mystery surrounding the Lodge family, as well as the undercurrent of racism and violence that infects the town. The stakes are raised, characters' true natures are revealed, and the carefully constructed facade of suburban life completely crumbles. At the heart of this unraveling is Gardner Lodge Matt Damon. By now, the truth about his involvement in his wife's murder has become painfully clear. He's no grieving husband. He's a calculating, cold-blooded man who, with the help of a hired criminal, staged the robbery and murder of Rose, Julianne Moore, as part of a twisted plot to secure a large insurance payout. What had seemed like a senseless act of violence now takes on a much darker meaning. Gardner, in his desperation, is willing to go to any lengths, whether it's through lying, manipulating those around him, or even committing further acts of violence, to protect his interests and keep his carefully constructed world from falling apart. As we move deeper into the second half of the film, Gardner's duplicity begins to become harder to ignore. He is no longer the mild-mannered, tragic figure that he appeared to be at the start. Instead, he is revealed to be a man completely devoid of empathy, willing to sacrifice anyone, including his own son, Nicky, Noah Jupe, to protect himself. Gardner's plan, which had been deceptively well thought out, begins to unravel when new details surface and when outside forces, like Detective Bud Cooper, Oscar Isaac, begin to close in on him. The appearance of Margaret, also played by Moore, Rose's twin sister, remains a key point in this unfolding drama. At first, Margaret seemed like a benign presence in the aftermath of the murder, a grieving sister who had come to comfort her family. But as the story progresses, Margaret's role grows increasingly ambiguous. She knows far more than she lets on, and her motives are far from clear. In the second half, it becomes apparent that Margaret isn't just a passive observer. She is actively involved in the events surrounding Rose's death. There's an unsettling energy around her, especially when she reveals that she and Gardner have been having an affair for some time. This revelation adds another layer of moral complexity to the film. Gardner's motives, once seen as driven solely by a desire for money, now appear more personal, bound up in his emotional attachment to Margaret and his willingness to do anything to maintain a sense of normalcy in his shattered world. The relationship between Gardner and Margaret is one of emotional manipulation and selfishness. Both characters operate under the assumption that the perfect suburban life is worth maintaining at all costs, even if it means lying, killing, or deceiving. The film begins to turn the lens inward, critiquing not just Gardner's actions, but the entire mentality of suburban life. The desire to keep up appearances, the fear of being found out, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for comfort and security. As the investigation intensifies, Detective Bud Cooper grows increasingly suspicious of Gardner's actions. His suspicions are not unfounded. Cooper, in his probing investigation, begins to piece together a more complete picture of the events surrounding Rose's death. One of the key moments in the second half occurs when Cooper confronts Gardner about his growing doubts. The private investigator's cool demeanor and sharp mind put pressure on Gardner, who begins to crack under the pressure. But even as the walls close in on him, Gardner's actions become more erratic. He refuses to back down from his plan and is willing to go to any lengths to keep the truth from coming out. Cooper, despite his suspicion, is also struggling with his own moral compass. The audience knows that he is more than just a detective trying to solve a case. He's a man who is confronting the moral ambiguity of the world around him. As he gets closer to the truth, Cooper's own sense of justice becomes complicated. The line between good and evil blurs for him, and he must decide how far he is willing to go to expose the truth. His investigation and interactions with Gardner are fraught with tension, as it becomes clear that neither of them is willing to let go of their own version of the truth. Meanwhile, the situation in Suburbicon itself becomes even more volatile. The story of the first African-American family, the Myers, moving into the neighborhood continues to develop, and it's impossible to ignore the deep racial tensions that it highlights. The Myers family, who have bravely decided to move into this all-white neighborhood, are subjected to cruel and violent harassment by their new neighbors. Their presence in the town becomes a lightning rod for all the animosities and insecurities that have been festering beneath the surface of Suburbicon's seemingly perfect veneer. The town's racism is raw, visceral, and unrelenting, and the way the residents treat the Myers family only serves to make the ugliness of suburban life more apparent. The Myers family's story is not merely a subplot. It's essential to understanding the broader themes of Suburbicon. It's a constant reminder of the forces of hatred and division that are rampant in American society, especially in the 1950s, and it serves as a counterpoint to the personal crimes of the Lodge family. As violence escalates against the Myers family, the two stories converge in a way that highlights the broader social issues at play. The second half of Suburbicon also sees the escalating tension between Gardner and his young son, Nicky. Nicky, who has been forced to witness his mother's brutal murder, begins to understand that things are not as they seem. The second half of the film is marked by Nicky's increasing awareness of the darkness around him. At one point, he catches Gardner in a lie, and the power dynamic between them shifts. Nicky becomes the victim of his father's manipulations, and the audience feels the deep emotional weight of this realization. Gardner, who had been trying to keep Nicky sheltered from the truth, now begins to involve him in the twisted plans he's concocted. It's a heartbreaking moment. The child who should have been protected is instead thrust into a world of crime and deceit, a casualty of his father's desperation. One of the most heart-wrenching developments is the growing realization that Nicky, who is still a child, is beginning to grasp that his father is not the hero of the story. The way the film explores Nicky's emotional journey, his confusion, his fear, and his dawning realization that his father is complicit in the horrors around him, is powerful. It's a tragic commentary on the way children are often caught in the crossfire of adult actions, forced to confront the harsh truths of the world far too early. As the tension reaches its peak, the climax of the film arrives. The shocking, violent denouement is set into motion by a series of escalating events. Gardner's web of lies and deceit unravels completely, as he is confronted with the truth of his actions. The layers of corruption, violence, and moral decay that have been building throughout the film come to a head in a tragic and brutal confrontation. The murder of Rose, the harassment of the Myers family, and Gardner's eventual downfall all intersect in a violent, explosive culmination. The resolution, while tragic, is inevitable. Gardner's attempts to maintain control over his life and his image ultimately lead to his downfall. There is no redemption for him, no happy ending. His world falls apart as the lies he's built his life on are exposed, and the facade of suburban perfection is completely destroyed. The film's final moments are filled with a quiet, devastating sense of inevitability, as Nicky is left to grapple with the fallout of his father's actions. Ultimately, Suburbicon is not just a film about murder, crime, or even the darkness lurking beneath suburban life. It's a reflection on the moral cost of maintaining the illusion of the American dream. In the end, the lies that Gardner tells himself and the lies that society tells itself about the idealized suburban life are both shattered. There are no winners in this story, just victims of a world built on deception, greed, and racism. And as the credits roll, the final image of Suburbicon leaves us with a haunting sense of what happens when we allow the darkness within to take over. In Suburbicon, the characters are not just figures moving within a plot. They are reflections of the darker undercurrents that flow beneath the idyllic surface of suburban life. The film, directed by George Clooney with a script co-written by Clooney, Joel, and Ethan Coen, taps into the profound contradictions in its characters, unearthing the hidden truths of the world they inhabit. As we journey through the complex, morally ambiguous terrain of the film, the characters evolve, revealing the subtle intricacies of their personalities, their motivations, and their desperate attempts to hold on to a semblance of control over their lives. The performances of the cast bring these characters to life in ways that make them unforgettable, leaving an indelible mark on the audience. At the heart of Suburbicon is Gardner Lodge, played with haunting coldness by Matt Damon. At first glance, Gardner appears to be a classic suburban father, stoic, seemingly normal, and tragic after the sudden, brutal murder of his wife, Rose. Yet as the narrative unfolds, Damon's portrayal of Gardner gradually peels back layers to reveal a far more complex and sinister character. Gardner's motivations are rooted in a deep-seated need for control and a desperate desire to maintain the facade of a perfect life at any cost. His desire for material wealth and the protection of his carefully constructed image overrides any shred of empathy or morality. As the film progresses, we witness Gardner's transformation from a grieving husband to a man who is willing to commit increasingly sinister acts to protect his interests. Damon's performance is chilling in its subtlety. He plays Gardner not as a man who is consumed by guilt or remorse, but as one whose cold pragmatism and fear of exposure drive him into morally questionable actions. He lies, deceives, and manipulates those around him, including his own son, Nicky. The shift in Gardner's character, his gradual unraveling, is mirrored in the way Damon plays him, with every smile, every soft-spoken word, and every attempt at appearing normal becoming a facade that masks his true nature. It's a performance that takes the audience on a journey from empathy to horror, showcasing the extent to which Gardner is willing to go to maintain the appearance of perfection. The heart of the film lies in the relationship between Gardner and his young son, Nikki, played with remarkable depth by Noah Jupe. Nikki is an innocent child, thrust into a world of violence, manipulation, and confusion. In the early parts of the film, Nikki is portrayed as a vulnerable, somewhat naive boy who is still trying to make sense of the world around him, especially after the tragic murder of his mother. His bond with his father, which initially seems like a natural one between a grieving parent and his child, soon becomes strained as Nikki begins to perceive the cracks in Gardner's facade. Nikki's arc in the film is one of painful realization. He is forced to confront the darkness within his father and the brutality of the world he is growing up in. Jupe's performance is quietly heartbreaking, capturing the vulnerability and confusion of a child who is slowly coming to terms with the loss of his mother and the betrayal of his father. As the film progresses, we watch Nikki grow more aware of the world's dangers, forced to mature far too quickly as he navigates the trauma of his family's unraveling. His transformation from a passive observer to an active participant in the story's tragic conclusion is one of the most poignant aspects of the film. Jupe's ability to convey the emotional weight of his character's journey is nothing short of remarkable, making Nikki's struggle to understand and survive one of the most compelling arcs in Suburbicon. On the other side of this toxic dynamic is Margaret, Rose's twin sister, also played by Julianne. At first, Margaret seems like a compassionate, grieving relative, someone who arrives to console her family after the death of her sister. However, as the film reveals, Margaret is far from the simple character we might have expected. In fact, she is as deeply entangled in the web of deception as Gardner. Her arrival in Suburbicon signals the deepening of the family's dysfunction, and her relationship with Gardner adds another layer of complexity to the narrative. Margaret's role in the story evolves from that of a sympathetic sister to someone whose moral ambiguity rivals that of Gardner. It is soon revealed that Margaret and Gardner have been having an affair, and that she is just as complicit in the scheme to murder Rose as he is. Moore's portrayal of Margaret is one of quiet menace. Her performance is full of subtlety. Margaret's exterior is calm, almost serene, but underneath it is a sense of urgency and manipulation. She is deeply entrenched in the fantasy of suburban perfection, willing to do whatever it takes to keep that world intact, even if it means going to extremes. Moore brings a chilling intensity to the role, capturing the complexity of a character who is both a victim and a perpetrator. Her scenes with Damon are electric with tension, as their characters try to navigate their shared guilt and growing paranoia. The supporting characters in Suburbicon are equally integral to the film's exploration of morality and societal dysfunction. One of the most significant of these is Detective Bud Cooper, played by Oscar Isaac. Cooper's role in the narrative is critical as he becomes the one person who is able to piece together the fragmented clues surrounding Rose's death. Isaac's performance as Cooper is both sharp and subtle, bringing a sense of quiet intelligence and determination to the character. Cooper is not just a detective. He is a man trying to make sense of the chaos around him, much like the audience. He is the film's moral center, standing in stark contrast to the lies and corruption surrounding him. Cooper's interactions with Gardner are particularly gripping. As he digs deeper into the investigation, he becomes increasingly suspicious of Gardner's behavior, and the tension between the two builds in a way that keeps the audience on the edge of their seats. Isaac's portrayal of Cooper strikes a balance between frustration and determination, embodying the detective's desire for justice and his growing disillusionment with the people around him. He's one of the few characters in the film who tries to get to the truth, no matter the personal cost, and his arc is one of quiet resistance to the moral decay surrounding him. The other supporting characters, especially the members of the Meyer family, are essential to the broader social commentary the film makes. The Meyers, the first African-American family to move into Suburbicon, are caught in the crosshairs of the town's racism and fear. Their presence is one of the key plot devices that tie the larger societal issues into the personal drama of the Lodge family. Mr. Meyer, played by Lethem Burke, is a quiet, dignified figure who refuses to bow to the prejudices of the neighborhood. His stoic resistance in the face of escalating hostility from the townspeople underscores the film's broader critique of American society, especially in the 1950s. The hostile treatment of the Myers family acts as a stark juxtaposition to the moral corruption of the Lodge family. While the Lodges are trapped in a cycle of deceit and violence, the Myers represent an enduring dignity in the face of overt hostility. Their story is not one of vengeance or malice. Rather, it highlights the daily realities of racism and bigotry, serving as a subtle but powerful counterpoint to the private, more insidious forms of violence that the Lodge family embodies. The Myers' tragic treatment at the hands of their neighbors heightens the film's sense of unease and moral dissonance, and their presence in the narrative serves to expand the film's scope beyond the Lodge family's dysfunctional dynamic. As Suburbicon hurtles toward its tragic conclusion, the film's characters collide in a way that underscores the themes of deception, greed, and racial prejudice that have been simmering throughout. Every character, from the seemingly benign to the overtly villainous, is shaped by the corrupting influence of suburban life, each one trying to maintain a sense of control and normalcy in a world that is anything but normal. The characters' arcs are not just personal but societal, and the performances by the cast make these themes resonate on a deeper level. The film leaves us with the haunting realization that the lies and betrayals of the Lodge family are not just their own. They are symptomatic of a larger societal sickness. The characters, in their pursuit of an idealized version of suburban life, expose the ugly truth that the American dream, at its core, is built on a foundation of lies, violence, and racism. Each character, through their actions and decisions, contributes to the narrative's emotional weight, creating a story that is as complex as it is unforgettable. The performances, too, ensure that these characters are etched into the viewer's memory, making Suburbicon not just a film, but an experience that lingers long after the credits roll. In Suburbicon, George Clooney, working with the Coen brothers' sharp writing, crafts a film that operates on multiple layers, blending dark comedy, social commentary, and a chilling exploration of suburban life. While its surface narrative centers on a botched crime and moral decay, there is much more happening beneath the surface. A world rich with hidden details, callbacks to classic films, foreshadowing of the inevitable collapse, and cultural references that, when noticed, reveal a deeper, more unsettling truth about the world the characters inhabit. The film is, at its core, an exercise in contradiction. It juxtaposes the veneer of suburban tranquility against the underlying chaos of corruption and violence. Every scene, every shot, feels laden with meaning, from the smallest gesture to the most blatant symbolism. These details create a cinematic world that, much like the character of Gardner Lodge, presents a calm exterior that hides far darker realities. One of the earliest instances of foreshadowing comes in the film's opening sequence, where the idyllic suburban neighborhood is introduced. Suburbicon, as presented in the film, seems like a perfect place, with manicured lawns, white picket fences, and neat homes that evoke the image of the American dream. Yet, it doesn't take long for the first cracks to appear. The image of the neighborhood is repeated several times in the film, each time with a slightly different context, each time revealing more about the lies it is built on. The visual symmetry of the neighborhood's pristine streets contrasts with the chaos happening inside the homes, and this discrepancy is a constant reminder that nothing in Suburbicon is as it seems. The first real hint of darkness comes when we meet the Myers family, the first African-American family to move into the otherwise all-white neighborhood. The tension surrounding their arrival is palpable, and the film makes it clear that their presence is a disruption to the status quo. As the townspeople react with open hostility, the camera lingers on the glaring faces of the neighbors, their suspicion and rage directed not just at the Myers family, but at the societal changes threatening their comfortable existence. What's subtle but significant here is how the filmmakers use this moment to highlight the growing sense of unease in the film. The introduction of the Myers family is not just a plot device to push the story forward, but an intentional commentary on the racial dynamics that were beginning to shift in America during the 1950s, the period in which the film is set. Later in the film, the focus shifts back to the Lodge family, and it is here that the foreshadowing becomes more pronounced. Gardner Lodge's clean-cut appearance, his meticulously ordered life, and his attempts to maintain a perfect family facade are key to understanding his character. Yet there are small details throughout the film that reveal cracks in this image. For example, his habit of meticulously sorting through and organizing documents, his constant attention to the little details of life, becomes a visual metaphor for the way he's attempting to control the uncontrollable. Every neat stack of papers, every perfectly folded shirt, every shiny surface is a way to hide the rot beneath. The film uses these moments to subtly hint that Gardner's obsession with order is not just a quirk, but a desperate attempt to keep the chaos of his actions at bay. A particularly clever bit of foreshadowing occurs during a scene where Gardner and his partner, a criminal named Mitch, Oscar Isaac, discuss the plan to kill Rose. The camera focuses for a brief moment on a black and white photo of a suburban house, placed in the background of the scene. The image, which at first glance seems innocuous, mirrors the image of the house that will later become the focal point of violence and corruption. It's a deliberate callback to the clean and sanitized world of Suburbicon, reminding the audience that even the most peaceful homes can be sites of betrayal and bloodshed. This subtle inclusion is a visual clue, suggesting that the town's pristine, cookie-cutter houses are not so much homes as they are carefully constructed facades, places where corruption and violence can be hidden in plain sight. The symbol of the house is an important one throughout the film. While it might initially seem like a mere backdrop to the events unfolding in Suburbicon, the house itself is integral to understanding the story's moral core. As the movie progresses, the house becomes a battleground for control, ownership, and the preservation of a fantasy. Gardner's initial goal is to maintain the illusion of a perfect life, to protect the house and the comfortable world it represents. But as he becomes increasingly desperate, the house becomes a site of violence and moral decay, ultimately serving as a metaphor for the crumbling American dream. Another subtle but telling detail is the use of color in the film. From the very beginning, the filmmakers use bright, almost garish hues to emphasize the dissonance between the outward appearance of suburban life and the dark forces at work beneath it. The pastel colors that dominate the landscape of Suburbicon, light blues, pinks, and greens, serve as a visual shorthand for the idealized version of suburban life. Yet these same colors are paired with moments of sudden violence or revelation, creating a jarring contrast. For example, when Gardner takes Nikki to visit a store in the middle of his violent actions, the store's brightly colored interior creates an uncomfortable tension with the looming darkness. The colors, while visually appealing, only enhance the sense that the world these characters inhabit is unnatural, a place where everything is carefully constructed and staged, but can easily fall apart at any moment. One of the most notable and deliberate callbacks in Suburbicon is to the classic 1960s film The Twilight Zone, particularly the famous episode titled, "The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street." In this episode, a seemingly perfect suburban neighborhood descends into chaos when the residents begin to suspect that one of their neighbors is an alien, triggering paranoia and violence. The tension in Suburbicon mirrors this episode's portrayal of suburban life as a fragile construct, easily destroyed by fear and suspicion. The film's satirical elements, especially in its exploration of racism and social tension, echo the paranoid tone of The Twilight Zone, offering a scathing critique of the way small communities often react to perceived threats, whether real or imagined. Cultural references are also scattered throughout the film, acting as a way to deepen its thematic complexity. The most obvious of these is the time period in which the film is set. The 1950s are depicted not just as a time of suburban prosperity, but as an era that, beneath the glossy surface, was rife with social and racial tensions. The Myers family's struggle to exist peacefully in a white, upper-middle-class neighborhood is a stark reminder of the deep-seated racism of the time. But there are also more subtle nods to this history, such as the use of the phrase Suburbicon itself, a blend of suburb and con, suggesting that the town is a place where things are hidden, a place built on the illusion of perfection but steeped in deceit. The film's title, Suburbicon, also draws on the larger cultural critique of post-World War II America, a time when the suburban ideal became a symbol of economic prosperity and social conformity. However, as Suburbicon unveils, this ideal is a fragile construct, sustained by lies, violence, and inequality. The title itself, therefore, acts as both a mockery and a warning, suggesting that the very thing Americans believed to be the pinnacle of success, suburban life, was, in fact, a mirage. Yet one of the most rewarding elements for attentive viewers is how the film weaves these seemingly disparate themes together. The residents' treatment of the Myers family becomes more than just a subplot. It becomes a metaphor for the larger moral decay at the heart of the story. The film's final moments, when the full scope of Gardner's actions is revealed, reveal that the neighborhood's racism, which initially seemed like a separate issue, is inextricably tied to the Lodge family's corruption. Gardner's attempt to keep his secret hidden, and the lengths to which he goes to protect his life, are mirrored in the way the community tries to shield itself from the truth about its own moral failings. In the end, Suburbicon is a film filled with layers of meaning that reward sharp-eyed viewers. Every visual detail, every subtle reference, is part of a larger critique of the American dream and the lies that prop it up. The film's visual and symbolic elements come together to create a world where appearances are everything and the truth is both elusive and deadly. From the carefully constructed homes to the seemingly perfect suburban streets, Suburbicon invites us to look beneath the surface and see the darkness that lies just below. It's a reminder that, even in the most perfect of settings, the cracks are always there, waiting to split everything apart. Filming Suburbicon was an intricate process, filled with unique challenges, unexpected twists, and a wealth of behind-the-scenes stories that add an extra layer of intrigue to this already captivating film. Directed by George Clooney and based on a script by Joel and Ethan Coen, the movie initially seemed like an ambitious project with its darkly comedic tone, critical social commentary, and visually striking setting. However, beneath the glossy, seemingly idyllic facade of suburban life lay a series of production hurdles and creative decisions that turned Suburbicon into something far more complicated than anyone had anticipated. One of the most intriguing elements of the film's inception was the collaboration between George Clooney and the Coen brothers. Clooney and the Coens are longtime friends and frequent collaborators, but Suburbicon marked their first time working together where Clooney was at the helm as director. The script, written by Joel and Ethan Coen, was originally conceived in the late 1980s. The story centered on suburban crime and racial tension, set against the backdrop of a picture-perfect 1950s neighborhood. Although the Coens had written the script years before, it had been shelved for some time, waiting for the right opportunity to come to life. When Clooney came across the script, he was immediately intrigued by its dark humor and satirical elements. Initially becoming involved as a producer, it didn't take long for him to realize that he wanted to direct it as well. The Coens, known for their often dry, cynical writing, saw Clooney as the perfect fit to bring their vision to the screen. However, this collaboration was not without creative differences. One of the most well-documented challenges in bringing Suburbicon to life was finding the right tone. The Coens' original script had a more slapstick, overtly comedic quality, while Clooney envisioned a more grounded film with a sense of tension underlying the dark humor. This tonal shift became one of the film's key features. It wasn't just about laughs, but also about exploring the ominous undertones of suburban life. The collaboration wasn't always smooth sailing, and Clooney and the Coens had to navigate their differing approaches to the material. Clooney wanted to emphasize pacing and emotional depth, while the Coens infused the script with sharp dialogue and biting satire. They eventually found common ground, creating a film that operates on multiple levels, blending suspense, humor, and social critique in a way that kept viewers on edge throughout the story. Matt Damon, cast in the film's central role as Gardner Lodge, was a natural fit for the character of the seemingly average suburban father with a dark secret. Damon, known for heroic roles in films like the Bourne Identity series, embraced the challenge of playing a morally ambiguous character. His portrayal of Gardner as a man who blends into the background of a perfect neighborhood while secretly committing horrific acts added an extra layer of complexity to the character. Clooney's direction and Damon's performance made Gardner's calm, almost robotic exterior unsettling in its contrast to his sinister nature. Damon's restrained performance, where emotions were often hidden beneath a veneer of control, became one of the most striking aspects of the film. Julianne Moore's casting was another highlight of the film, as she portrayed two roles: Rose, Gardner's wife, and Margaret, Rose's twin sister. The fact that Moore could take on both characters, each with such distinct personalities, showed off her versatility. Margaret, in particular, was an essential character in the film's moral decay, as she was just as involved in the story's corruption as Gardner. Moore's ability to seamlessly switch between the two roles, especially when portraying Margaret's cold and calculating demeanor compared to Rose's tragic innocence, added depth and complexity to the film's themes. Perhaps the most surprising casting choice was young Noah Jupe, who played Nicky, Gardner's son. Jupe's casting was unconventional, considering he was relatively unknown at the time, yet his performance exceeded all expectations. He portrayed a boy trying to make sense of the violence and corruption around him with heartbreaking sincerity. His scenes opposite Damon were some of the most emotionally charged, showcasing the growing tension between father and son. The casting of Jupe was a deliberate move by Clooney to illustrate the impact of Gardner's actions on the next generation. Jupe's performance, innocent yet aware, became an emotional anchor in a film otherwise steeped in moral ambiguity. Visually, Suburbicon is as much a character as its human counterparts. One of the most remarkable aspects of the film is how it captures the contrast between the sterile, almost surreal perfection of suburban life and the moral decay lying just beneath the surface. The set design was crucial in achieving this effect, and much of it was inspired by mid-century American homes. The production design team worked meticulously to create a suburban neighborhood that looked both familiar and unsettling. The clean lines, pastel colors, and neat rows of houses seemed to symbolize an idealized version of American life. Yet the color palette also helped convey a sense of unease. The most significant visual choice was the design of the homes in Suburbicon itself. The houses were all virtually identical, large, cookie-cutter structures that represented the notion of a one-size-fits-all suburban utopia. However, as the story unfolded, these identical houses began to feel more sinister, symbolizing the uniformity and suffocating conformity of American life. The houses in Suburbicon felt both too perfect and too fragile, mirroring the fragile lives of the characters within them. The Lodge family's home, where much of the film's action takes place, perfectly embodied the themes of the film. It was a house that seemed meticulously clean and orderly, yet its pristine exterior couldn't shield it from the violent events that were about to unfold. In addition to the aesthetic elements, the film's use of color was another key component in conveying its deeper themes. The filmmakers intentionally chose a bright, almost garish color scheme, dominated by pastel blues, pinks, and greens, to contrast with the dark, violent undercurrent of the story. While these colors initially conveyed the innocence and safety of suburban life, they became increasingly unsettling as the film's darker themes emerged. The contrast between the bright, happy colors and the violence that erupted within these spaces amplified the tension in the film. This color palette, meant to evoke the optimism of the 1950s, served as a visual metaphor for the fragile nature of the American dream. Amidst the creative process, there were also moments that sparked controversy and raised questions about the film's portrayal of race and violence. The film's depiction of the African-American Myers family, who were subjected to violent racism in the supposedly perfect suburban neighborhood, caused some viewers to feel uneasy. Some felt that the film used the racial conflict as merely a backdrop for the main plot of crime and deception, without truly exploring the emotional toll that racism takes on its victims. Clooney, however, defended this aspect of the film, explaining that the racial elements were meant to highlight the larger moral decay at play, and show how racism was an inherent part of the societal problems that the film was exploring. The film's violent tone also generated some discussion. Although Clooney and the Coens were known for blending dark humor with violence, Suburbicon pushed the boundaries, with moments of brutality that some viewers found shocking. The film's violence was always framed within the context of the characters' moral failings, but the starkness of these violent scenes was unexpected for many audiences. Clooney admitted that the violence was designed to underscore the hypocrisy and ugliness that lay beneath the idealized American suburban life, but it still raised some eyebrows among those who had anticipated a more straightforward dark comedy. The production of Suburbicon was filled with challenges, creative decisions, and unexpected moments that ultimately shaped the final product. The collaboration between Clooney and the Coen brothers, the casting choices, the meticulous production design, and the film's provocative social commentary all played integral roles in making the film what it is. While the movie may not have resonated with every viewer, it remains a unique exploration of the American suburban experience, offering layers of meaning and challenging the very notions of the American dream. The production behind Suburbicon mirrors the story it tells. What looks perfect on the outside may be deeply flawed, and it's only when the surface cracks that the true nature of the world beneath is revealed. Filming Suburbicon was an intricate process, filled with unique challenges, unexpected twists, and a wealth of behind-the-scenes stories that add an extra layer of intrigue to this already captivating film. Directed by George Clooney and based on a script by Joel and Ethan Coen, the movie initially seemed like an ambitious project with its darkly comedic tone, critical social commentary, and visually striking setting. However, beneath the glossy, seemingly idyllic facade of suburban life lay a series of production hurdles and creative decisions that turned Suburbicon into something far more complicated than anyone had anticipated. One of the most intriguing elements of the film's inception was the collaboration between George Clooney and the Coen brothers. Clooney and the Coens are longtime friends and frequent collaborators, but Suburbicon marked their first time working together where Clooney was at the helm as director. The script, written by Joel and Ethan Coen, was originally conceived in the late 1980s. The story centered on suburban crime and racial tension, set against the backdrop of a picture-perfect 1950s neighborhood. Although the Coens had written the script years before, it had been shelved for some time, waiting for the right opportunity to come to life. When Clooney came across the script, he was immediately intrigued by its dark humor and satirical elements. Initially becoming involved as a producer, it didn't take long for him to realize that he wanted to direct it as well. The Coens, known for their often dry, cynical writing, saw Clooney as the perfect fit to bring their vision to the screen. However, this collaboration was not without creative differences. One of the most well-documented challenges in bringing Suburbicon to life was finding the right tone. The Coens' original script had a more slapstick, overtly comedic quality, while Clooney envisioned a more grounded film with a sense of tension underlying the dark humor. This tonal shift became one of the film's key features. It wasn't just about laughs, but also about exploring the ominous undertones of suburban life. The collaboration wasn't always smooth sailing, and Clooney and the Coens had to navigate their differing approaches to the material. Clooney wanted to emphasize pacing and emotional depth, while the Coens infused the script with sharp dialogue and biting satire. They eventually found common ground, creating a film that operates on multiple levels, blending suspense, humor, and social critique in a way that kept viewers on edge throughout the story. Matt Damon, cast in the film's central role as Gardner Lodge, was a natural fit for the character of the seemingly average suburban father with a dark secret. Damon, known for heroic roles in films like the Bourne Identity series, embraced the challenge of playing a morally ambiguous character. His portrayal of Gardner as a man who blends into the background of a perfect neighborhood, while secretly committing horrific acts, added an extra layer of complexity to the character. Clooney's direction and Damon's performance made Gardner's calm, almost robotic exterior unsettling in its contrast to his sinister nature. Damon's restrained performance, where emotions were often hidden beneath a veneer of control, became one of the most striking aspects of the film. Julianne Moore's casting was another highlight of the film, as she portrayed two roles: Rose, Gardner's wife, and Margaret, Rose's twin sister. The fact that Moore could take on both characters, each with such distinct personalities, showed off her versatility. Margaret, in particular, was an essential character in the film's moral decay, as she was just as involved in the story's corruption as Gardner. Moore's ability to seamlessly switch between the two roles, especially when portraying Margaret's cold and calculating demeanor compared to Rose's tragic innocence, added depth and complexity to the film's themes. Perhaps the most surprising casting choice was young Noah Jupe, who played Nicky, Gardner's son. Jupe's casting was unconventional, considering he was relatively unknown at the time, yet his performance exceeded all expectations. He portrayed a boy trying to make sense of the violence and corruption around him with heartbreaking sincerity. His scenes opposite Damon were some of the most emotionally charged, showcasing the growing tension between father and son. The casting of Jupe was a deliberate move by Clooney to illustrate the impact of Gardner's actions on the next generation. Jupe's performance, innocent yet aware, became an emotional anchor in a film otherwise steeped in moral ambiguity. Visually, Suburbicon is as much a character as its human counterparts. One of the most remarkable aspects of the film is how it captures the contrast between the sterile, almost surreal perfection of suburban life and the moral decay lying just beneath the surface. The set design was crucial in achieving this effect, and much of it was inspired by mid-century American homes. The production design team worked meticulously to create a suburban neighborhood that looked both familiar and unsettling. The clean lines, pastel colors, and neat rows of houses seemed to symbolize an idealized version of American life. Yet the color palette also helped convey a sense of unease. The most significant visual choice was the design of the homes in Suburbicon itself. The houses were all virtually identical, large, cookie-cutter structures that represented the notion of a one-size-fits-all suburban utopia. However, as the story unfolded, these identical houses began to feel more sinister, symbolizing the uniformity and suffocating conformity of American life. The houses in Suburbicon felt both too perfect and too fragile, mirroring the fragile lives of the characters within them. The Lodge family's home, where much of the film's action takes place, perfectly embodied the themes of the film. It was a house that seemed meticulously clean and orderly, yet its pristine exterior couldn't shield it from the violent events that were about to unfold. In addition to the aesthetic elements, the film's use of color was another key component in conveying its deeper themes. The filmmakers intentionally chose a bright, almost garish color scheme, dominated by pastel blues, pinks, and greens, to contrast with the dark, violent undercurrent of the story. While these colors initially conveyed the innocence and safety of suburban life, they became increasingly unsettling as the film's darker themes emerged. The contrast between the bright, happy colors and the violence that erupted within these spaces amplified the tension in the film. This color palette, meant to evoke the optimism of the 1950s, served as a visual metaphor for the fragile nature of the American dream. Amidst the creative process, there were also moments that sparked controversy and raised questions about the film's portrayal of race and violence. The film's depiction of the African-American Myers family, who were subjected to violent racism in the supposedly perfect suburban neighborhood, caused some viewers to feel uneasy. Some felt that the film used the racial conflict as merely a backdrop for the main plot of crime and deception, without truly exploring the emotional toll that racism takes on its victims. Clooney, however, defended this aspect of the film, explaining that the racial elements were meant to highlight the larger moral decay at play, and show how racism was an inherent part of the societal problems that the film was exploring. The film's violent tone also generated some discussion. Although Clooney and the Coens were known for blending dark humor with violence, Suburbicon pushed the boundaries, with moments of brutality that some viewers found shocking. The film's violence was always framed within the context of the characters' moral failings, but the starkness of these violent scenes was unexpected for many audiences. Clooney admitted that the violence was designed to underscore the hypocrisy and ugliness that lay beneath the idealized American suburban life, but it still raised some eyebrows among those who had anticipated a more straightforward dark comedy. The production of Suburbicon was filled with challenges, creative decisions, and unexpected moments that ultimately shaped the final product. The collaboration between Clooney and the Coen brothers, the casting choices, the meticulous production design, and the film's provocative social commentary all played integral roles in making the film what it is. While the movie may not have resonated with every viewer, it remains a unique exploration of the American suburban experience, offering layers of meaning and challenging the very notions of the American dream. The production behind Suburbicon mirrors the story it tells. What looks perfect on the outside may be deeply flawed, and it's only when the surface cracks that the true nature of the world beneath is revealed. Suburbicon may have been met with mixed reactions upon its release, but the critical perspectives on its most impactful scenes reveal a movie that is both darkly comedic and hauntingly tragic, a film that raises questions about the cost of conformity, the nature of violence, and the deep flaws in the idealized vision of suburban life. There are key moments in the film that define its emotional and thematic resonance, moments that contribute to its unsettling tone and powerful social commentary. These moments, though varied in their approach, work in harmony to shape the overall experience of Suburbicon, challenging the audience to examine the darker undercurrents of a seemingly idyllic world. Let's dive into these pivotal scenes, exploring their emotional depth, thematic weight, and lasting impact. The opening of Suburbicon is perhaps one of its most effective sequences in setting the tone for everything that follows. The film begins with a strikingly bright, cheerful suburban neighborhood, the kind of place you'd expect in a 1950s sitcom. There's a soft, almost twee aesthetic to the visuals, accompanied by a light-hearted, upbeat score that might make viewers feel like they've stepped into a time capsule of American suburban bliss. The camera moves slowly through this picturesque setting, introducing the viewer to its cookie-cutter homes, pristine lawns, and neighbors who appear to have it all. But there's something off about the way the film presents this picture-perfect world. Feels too clean, too ordered, and too calm. The house, the neighborhood, the people. Everything is pristine and untouched, but beneath it all lurks a deep-seated unease. The sudden, jarring cut to the violent crime that sets the film's main plot in motion breaks the idyllic facade, plunging us into a world where this perfect neighborhood is far from what it seems. This moment is important for two reasons. It establishes the tension between surface-level perfection and hidden corruption, and it lays the groundwork for the way Suburbicon will explore these themes throughout the film. The violent attack on the Myers family, the African-American family that has just moved into the neighborhood, sets in motion not only the criminal underworld, but also the social commentary about racial tension that will haunt the entire film. This early juxtaposition of the seemingly serene world of Suburbicon with its brutal undercurrents is a visual cue to the audience about what is to come. The destruction of innocence, the fragility of the American dream, and the deep-seated flaws in the world's most perfect society. Another key moment that helps define the emotional and thematic depth of the film is the scene in which Rose, Gardner's wife, is killed in an almost random act of violence. Her murder, though shocking, is not just a plot device but a manifestation of the moral decay that plagues the characters. The suddenness and coldness of the crime, committed by the people who should have been closest to her, serves as a wake-up call to both the characters and the audience. It's a moment that shakes the very foundation of the film, forcing the viewer to confront the reality of a world where evil lurks behind closed doors and where betrayal is a fact of life. The brutality of Rose's death is felt deeply by her son, Nicky, who witnesses not only the loss of his mother, but also the terrifying truth about the kind of person his father really is. The scene is crucial in highlighting the theme of deception and the lengths people will go to maintain their facades of normality, even when it costs them everything. Gardner's transformation throughout the film is another key element that shapes its emotional trajectory. He starts as a seemingly ordinary man, a quiet suburban father with a perfect life on the surface. However, as the story progresses, Gardner's true nature is revealed through a series of increasingly violent and manipulative actions. One of the most impactful moments in Gardner's arc comes when he reveals his true self to his son, Nicky. This scene is not only pivotal because it shows the father's darker side, but also because it's a moment where the emotional stakes for Nicky reach their highest point. The tension between father and son, which has been building throughout the film, erupts in this emotionally charged scene. Gardner's actions are finally exposed for what they truly are: self-serving, cold, and utterly devoid of the empathy that should define a parent. Nicky's reaction, a mixture of fear, confusion, and hurt, makes this moment especially poignant. It's a stark portrayal of the consequences of a fractured moral compass and a father's betrayal of his child's trust. As the narrative unfolds, the audience's sense of dread intensifies, and the film continuously toys with expectations, leading up to its climax. One of the most intense moments in Suburbicon occurs during the final confrontation between Gardner and his enemies. This scene is a masterclass in suspense, where the tension has been building throughout the film. Gardner, having committed so many horrific acts, now faces the consequences of his actions. It's a moment of reckoning for him, but it's also a moment of catharsis for the audience. After all the deception, all the lies, and all the violence, the audience is left to wonder if anyone in this twisted world can truly get what they deserve. The outcome is tragic, as Gardner is caught in a vicious cycle of his own making, and his fate mirrors the dark reality of the world in which he lives. But the most heart-wrenching and thought-provoking moment in the entire film is the very last scene, in which Nicky, having witnessed the destruction of his family and the crumbling of his idyllic world, stands alone. The shot is haunting. Nicky is framed by the same suburban streets that once represented the safety and security of American life. But now those streets feel empty and desolate. The final image lingers on Nicky's face, and in that fleeting moment, we see the weight of everything he has lost, everything he has come to understand about the world around him. It's a tragic ending, one that forces the viewer to confront the lasting consequences of the choices made by Gardner and the others in this disintegrating world. Nicky's final glance at the camera is both a plea for understanding and a commentary on the innocence lost in a world governed by greed, deception, and violence. In addition to the emotional and narrative weight of these scenes, the thematic significance cannot be understated. Suburbicon is a film that explores the fragility of the American dream, the dangers of conformity, and the social and racial tensions that lie beneath the surface of a seemingly perfect society. The film's depiction of the suburban neighborhood as a microcosm of America is essential in understanding how these key moments impact the overall story. The moments of violence, betrayal, and loss are not just about the characters themselves. They're about the larger societal forces that shape their actions. The suburban setting, which initially appears so pristine, serves as a metaphor for the hollowness at the heart of American ideals. The characters, whether they are the privileged suburbanites or the marginalized African-American family, are all trapped within the same system of hypocrisy and corruption. The film critiques the American dream by showing how it is built on lies, and how those lies lead to violence, disillusionment, and ultimately tragedy. The audience's reactions to these key moments are just as important as the scenes themselves. Suburbicon works on multiple levels. It's a dark comedy, a social critique, and a psychological thriller. The film's ability to evoke conflicting emotions, laughter, shock, fear, sadness, makes it a challenging experience for viewers. The discomfort felt during certain scenes is intentional. Clooney and the Coens deliberately set out to make the audience question their own perceptions of morality, justice, and the American way of life. The uncomfortable, often jarring transitions between humor and horror keep the audience on edge, forcing them to confront the darker realities that lie beneath the surface of the story. In the end, these key moments are what shape the emotional core of Suburbicon. They challenge the viewer to think critically about the nature of evil, the disillusionment with the American dream, and the lasting effects of violence on a community. The film's ability to weave together humor and horror, to blur the lines between victim and perpetrator, and to leave the audience with a sense of unease long after the credits roll is a testament to its complex, multi-layered storytelling. Each of these moments, whether they evoke a sense of tragedy, surprise, or discomfort, works in concert to deliver a powerful, thought-provoking experience that lingers long after the film has ended. When watching Suburbicon, it's easy to get lost in its carefully crafted suburban world and the moral complexities that unfold within it. The film, though dark in its themes, offers a visually striking and technically sophisticated narrative that sets it apart from typical thrillers. Behind the polished exterior of the film is a rich tapestry of creative and technical innovations, many of which were carefully designed to push the boundaries of what audiences expected from a movie about suburban life. Yet, beneath the surface of the completed film lies a production riddled with challenges, unexpected hurdles, and groundbreaking techniques that contributed to making the film as visually arresting and thematically deep as it is. One of the most striking elements of Suburbicon is its deliberate choice to set the entire story within a carefully constructed, almost dreamlike suburban environment. The 1950s-era suburb in which the film takes place isn't just a backdrop. It's a character in itself, representing the idealized version of American life, one that hides deep secrets under its pristine surface. The production design team, led by Oscar-winning production designer James D. Bissell, worked tirelessly to create this perfectly sterile, yet ominously artificial world. The decision to shoot much of the film on a meticulously built set rather than a real suburban neighborhood was driven by the desire to craft a world that felt both familiar and deeply unsettling. By constructing this environment from scratch, The filmmakers ensured that the world of Suburbicon would reflect the thematic undercurrents of the film, a world that looks perfect on the surface but is deeply flawed and rotten beneath. The decision to create a synthetic suburb also came with significant production hurdles. Finding the perfect location to shoot the film proved to be more difficult than expected. The filmmakers initially scouted various real suburban neighborhoods, but none provided the clean, pristine aesthetic that they were after. They needed a place that would reflect the idealized mid-century American suburbs, but with a slightly off-kilter edge to it, where another key element of the production was the careful attention to color and lighting. Cinematographer Robert Elswit, a frequent collaborator with Clooney, brought his unique visual style to Suburbicon, creating a look that was both sleek and disquieting. The film's color palette, dominated by pastel blues, pinks, and greens, reflected the optimism and innocence of 1950s America. But the way the colors were used and juxtaposed with moments of violence created a sense of unease. The bright, almost garish tones of the homes and the suburb itself became increasingly unsettling as the story progressed, as the audience began to understand that this world was not as perfect as it seemed. The lighting in Suburbicon was also used to create a distinct atmosphere, particularly during scenes of heightened tension. The filmmakers employed a lot of shadow play, with characters often shrouded in darkness or half-lit in ominous ways. This not only emphasized the moral ambiguity of the characters, but also contributed to the film's noir-like quality. The interplay of light and dark was a constant theme throughout the film, mirroring the duality of suburban life, the shiny, happy exterior that masked the rottenness beneath. This contrast between light and shadow added an extra layer of psychological tension, pushing the audience to question the morality of the characters and the world they inhabited. Beyond the visual techniques, the sound design and music also played a crucial role in shaping the atmosphere of the film. Composer Alexander Desplat's score is subtle yet unnerving, using strings and piano to create an eerie, almost surreal quality. The music often hovers between whimsical and sinister, capturing the strange duality of the film's tone. Desplat's score never fully lets the viewer relax, ensuring that the tension remains constant, even in seemingly peaceful moments. The juxtaposition of light, playful music against moments of extreme violence or tension makes the scenes even more unsettling, forcing the audience to confront the uncomfortable truth about the world Suburbicon is portraying. Interestingly, one of the more challenging aspects of the production involved striking the right balance between humor and horror. The script, penned by Joel and Ethan Coen, was laced with dark humor, but Clooney wanted to take a more grounded approach with the material. It was a delicate balance to strike. Too much humor, and the darkness of the story would feel trivialized. Too much drama, and the film might lose its satirical edge. The decision to play the humor more subtly, allowing it to emerge from the characters' situations and the absurdity of their actions, was key to the film's success. Clooney and his team made a conscious effort to ensure that the humor never overshadowed the film's darker themes, but still provided moments of levity and relief. This nuanced approach to tone was one of the defining features of the film and gave it a distinct voice in a genre often characterized by overt satire or melodrama. Another aspect of Suburbicon's production that deserves attention is the performances of the cast. George Clooney, as director, made it a priority to work closely with the actors to develop layered, complex characters. Matt Damon's portrayal of Gardner Lodge is both restrained and chilling, creating a character whose actions are often in stark contrast to his outward appearance. Damon's ability to convey both the banality and the malice of his character is a testament to his skill as an actor, and it was a key part of the film's success. Clooney worked carefully with Damon to ensure that his performance conveyed not just a sense of suburban normalcy, but also the tension and darkness lurking underneath. Julianne Moore's role as both Rose and Margaret Lodge was another piece of casting brilliance. The duality of her characters, one tragic and the other manipulative, allowed Moore to showcase her remarkable versatility. Her portrayal of Rose, a woman who is trapped in a world of violence and deception, added depth to the film's exploration of loss, guilt, and complicity. Moore's performance as Margaret, however, took a darker turn, as she became a key player in the criminal activities surrounding Gardner. Her performances are a study in contrast, and they add to the overall sense of unease that permeates the film. Despite the challenges of balancing tone, finding the right locations, and working with a talented but diverse cast, Suburbicon stands as a testament to the power of collaboration and technical innovation. The film's ability to weave together thematic elements, visual storytelling, and emotional depth speaks to the meticulous planning and execution behind its production. The film's visual style, from the set design to the lighting and color palette, all serve to reinforce the core message of the film: the darkness that lies beneath the surface of the American dream. Suburbicon may not have received universal acclaim, but its creative and technical achievements make it a fascinating study in both filmmaking and the exploration of complex societal issues. The production process was filled with unexpected hurdles, yet it produced a work that defied expectations. The synthetic suburban world, the striking visuals, the nuanced performances, and the complex interplay of humor and horror all combine to make Suburbicon a unique cinematic experience. Clooney and his team worked tirelessly to bring the Coen brothers' script to life, and though the film may not have resonated with every viewer, it remains an impressive technical accomplishment that underscores the deep complexity of its themes. Ultimately, Suburbicon is a film that demonstrates the power of thoughtful, intentional filmmaking. A film that challenges its viewers while immersing them in a world that is both beautiful and terrifying, all at once. Suburbicon is a film that unfolds like a finely crafted puzzle, with each piece revealing a deeper truth about the world in which it is set. On the surface, it appears to be a dark comedy about a seemingly perfect suburban neighborhood gone awry, but as the layers are peeled back, it becomes clear that the film's true power lies in its exploration of deep societal themes, its unflinching social commentary, and its symbolic exploration of the American dream. At its core, Suburbicon is not just a story about personal betrayal or criminal activity. It's an indictment of the very ideals that American suburbia represents, exposing the hypocrisies, racial divides, and moral decay that have always simmered just beneath the surface of the American dream. The suburban setting, initially presented as an idealized version of 1950s America, is one of the film's most powerful symbolic elements. At first glance, the neighborhood of Suburbicon seems to embody all the aspirations of post-war America. Pristine homes, manicured lawns, and a sense of order that suggests stability and contentment. Yet, as the story unfolds, we see that this perfect, picturesque world is nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. Beneath its immaculate surface, the neighborhood is rife with tension, betrayal, and violence. A stark commentary on how the idealized version of suburban life hides uncomfortable truths about race, class, and human nature. The image of the perfect suburb, with its rows of identical homes, becomes a symbol of the conformity that characterizes much of American society. In this world, everyone is expected to conform to the same standards of behavior to present a facade of contentment and moral superiority, no matter the cost. The inhabitants of Suburbicon are trapped in a cycle of self-deception, pretending to live perfect lives while secretly harboring dark secrets and engaging in acts of cruelty. The film suggests that this pressure to conform, to maintain a facade of normalcy, is ultimately what drives the characters to their most heinous actions. Gardner Lodge, for example, is desperate to maintain the illusion of a perfect family life, even at the cost of his wife's death, because he cannot bear to break free from the suburban ideal. His actions are driven by a need to preserve the image of suburban respectability, no matter the personal cost. This tension between appearance and reality is a recurring theme throughout the film, and it extends beyond just the characters' personal lives. The film makes it clear that the suburban world itself is built on a foundation of lies, and that these lies are inextricably tied to the broader social and racial dynamics of 1950s America. One of the most striking aspects of Suburbicon is how it juxtaposes the personal drama of the Lodge family with the larger societal upheaval occurring just outside their idyllic neighborhood. As the story progresses, the film shifts its focus to the new African-American family, the Myers, who move into the neighborhood, challenging the status quo. The violence and hostility they face from the residents of Suburbicon serve as a painful reminder of the racial tensions that defined much of America's history, particularly in the post-war years. The placement of the Myers family in the heart of the film's narrative is no accident. While the main plot revolves around the Lodge family's descent into criminality, the treatment of the Myers family serves as a foil to their story, highlighting the stark contrast between the idealized world of suburbia and the harsh realities of racial prejudice. The Myers' arrival is met with hostility, their home is picketed, and they are subjected to brutal treatment from the white residents. This reflects the deeply entrenched racism of the time and underscores the film's message that, while the world of Suburbicon may appear to be perfect on the surface, it is in fact deeply flawed and corrupt at its core. The contrast between the Myers' quiet dignity and the Lodge family's violent acts of betrayal serves as a poignant commentary on the moral rot that lies just beneath the surface of American society. The tragic story of the Myers family is not just a reflection of the racial prejudice that characterized post-war America, but also an exploration of the ways in which fear and ignorance shape societal attitudes. In the film, the white residents of Suburbicon view the Myers as a threat to their comfortable way of life, simply because they are different. This irrational fear of the other is a powerful and disturbing reflection of the xenophobia and racial tensions that permeated the culture of the time. The decision to include this subplot is a bold one, and it serves to highlight the extent to which fear and hatred can shape people's actions, leading them to commit unspeakable acts of violence in the name of preserving a false sense of order. In the midst of this racial tension, the film also explores the theme of moral decay, particularly through the character of Gardner Lodge. Gardner's transformation from a seemingly mild-mannered suburbanite to a cold-blooded killer is one of the most striking elements of the film, and it serves as a metaphor for the moral decay that lies at the heart of American society. Gardner's actions, which include the murder of his wife and the manipulation of his son, are driven by a desire to maintain the illusion of normalcy, even as his world crumbles around him. His descent into violence is a direct result of his inability to confront the truth about the world he inhabits, both the personal truth of his own moral corruption and the larger societal truth of a world built on racial and class-based inequalities. At the heart of Gardner's actions is a desperate need to preserve the outward appearance of a perfect family life. His willingness to sacrifice everything, his wife, his son, his integrity, just to maintain this facade speaks to the broader cultural obsession with appearances in American society. Suburbicon critiques the way in which people, particularly in suburban settings, are often driven by a need to appear successful, happy, and morally upright, even at the expense of their own happiness and well-being. In many ways, Gardner is a product of this culture, a man who has been conditioned to believe that his worth is defined by the appearance of his life rather than its substance. His actions are a reflection of the dangerous power of this obsession with perfection, and the destructive consequences that arise when people are forced to live in a world of constant self-deception. Another key theme in Suburbicon is the corrupting influence of greed. From the very beginning of the film, we see that the characters' actions are motivated by financial gain, whether it's Gardner's desire to inherit his wife's money or the various criminals who are looking to take advantage of the situation. The theme of greed is also reflected in the larger societal context of the film, particularly in the post-war economic boom of the 1950s. This period saw the rise of consumerism and the growth of the American middle class, but it also brought with it an increasing sense of inequality and a desire for material wealth at any cost. Suburbicon critiques this obsession with wealth and the lengths people will go to attain it, even if it means sacrificing their morals and their humanity in the process. Symbolically, Suburbicon uses various elements of the setting to reflect these deeper themes. The most obvious of these is the suburban neighborhood itself, which represents the illusory nature of the American dream. But there are also subtler symbols at play throughout the film. The use of the house as a symbol of both safety and entrapment is particularly striking. The house is meant to represent the ideal of suburban life, a place of security and comfort. Yet for the characters, the house becomes a prison, trapping them in a web of lies and violence. The house, which appears perfect on the outside, is revealed to be a site of profound corruption, much like the American dream itself. The film's ending, in which young Nikki is left standing alone on the doorstep of the house, serves as a powerful metaphor for the loss of innocence and the collapse of the suburban ideal. Nikki's journey throughout the film mirrors the audience's own realization that the world of Suburbicon is not what it seems. The final shot, in which Nikki looks directly at the camera, is a poignant moment of recognition, both for the character and for the viewer. It is a moment of awakening, where the truth about the world around him, about the lies, the violence, and the racial prejudice, becomes impossible to ignore. In conclusion, Suburbicon is a film that uses its suburban setting as a powerful metaphor for the darker truths of American society. Through its exploration of themes like race, class, greed, and moral decay, the film critiques the very notion of the American dream, exposing the lies and hypocrisies that have long been hidden beneath its surface. The symbolism of the perfect suburban neighborhood, the moral deterioration of the characters, and the brutal treatment of the Myers family all serve to reinforce the film's message that the idealized version of suburban life is nothing more than a facade, and that beneath it lies a world of fear, hatred, and moral corruption. Suburbicon may be a story about a small, isolated neighborhood, but its themes are universal, offering a chilling reflection on the state of society both then and now. Suburbicon is a masterclass in visual storytelling, where every frame, every shot, every subtle choice in lighting, color, and sound contributes to the dark, satirical atmosphere that defines the film. George Clooney, as the director, carefully crafted a world that is both unnervingly familiar and hauntingly strange. The film is a visual representation of the American dream's dark underbelly, and it uses its cinematic techniques to convey the complexities of the story and its themes. Through meticulous cinematography, precise editing, clever use of sound design, and a haunting musical score, Suburbicon immerses the audience in a world where appearances deceive and every detail serves a greater narrative purpose. From the very first frame, Suburbicon sets the tone with its striking visual style. The film takes place in a suburban neighborhood that, at first glance, seems to encapsulate the perfect American dream. The houses are neatly aligned, the lawns are immaculate, and the streets are clean. The color palette of the film, dominated by pastel hues, light blues, greens, and pinks, conveys the seemingly perfect 1950s suburban world. These colors are a visual cue that speaks to the innocence, order, and tranquility that the American dream is often associated with. Yet, beneath these idealized colors lurks a palpable sense of unease, a sense that something isn't quite right. This careful use of color throughout the film is one of its most striking stylistic choices, and it's something that permeates both the physical setting and the emotional undercurrent of the story. Cinematographer Robert Elswit, an Oscar-winning veteran, is responsible for bringing Clooney's vision to life visually. Elswit's work in Suburbicon is both sleek and unnerving, capturing the contradiction between the seemingly perfect exterior of suburban life and the chaos that lies beneath. The film's cinematography is a direct extension of its themes, where smooth surfaces, straight lines, and symmetrical compositions contrast with the disjointed, violent behavior of the characters. Throughout the film, the camera lingers on meticulously framed shots of the neighborhood, pristine rows of identical homes, manicured lawns, perfectly trimmed hedges, images that convey the facade of suburban life. But these shots are not just aesthetically pleasing. They are loaded with irony. The sharp, clean lines of the compositions emphasize the false perfection of the world the characters inhabit, making the violence and moral decay that unfold within it even more striking. One of the most striking examples of Elswit's cinematography comes during the opening scenes, when the idyllic world of Suburbicon is first introduced. The opening shot of the perfect suburban street, with its rows of identical houses and perfectly tended lawns, is almost too perfect. It's an image that feels artificial, like a picture in a magazine. This pristine world is immediately set up as a symbol of the American dream, the idealized version of post-war suburban life, complete with its clean streets and family-friendly atmosphere. But the camera quickly pulls away from these pristine visuals, slowly zooming in on the cracks in the facade. It's in these small details, the cracked sidewalk, the dirty windows, the off-kilter angles, that the visual style of the film begins to reflect the narrative's darker undercurrents. The camera angles often shift from wide, symmetrical shots to closer, more intimate compositions that mirror the film's growing sense of tension and unease. As the story progresses, El's wit uses lighting to further emphasize the growing darkness. One of the most notable techniques used in the film is the interplay between light and shadow. This is particularly effective in moments of moral ambiguity or violence, where the characters are often bathed in harsh light or cloaked in shadow. The lighting serves not just to create atmosphere but also to underscore the film's central themes of duplicity and moral decay. In scenes of violence or treachery, the characters are often placed in stark contrast to their environment, highlighting the disconnect between their actions and the world around them. This contrast is visually jarring, and it amplifies the sense of unease and discomfort that the audience feels as the story unfolds. Editing also plays a key role in the pacing and overall mood of Suburbicon. The film is marked by a deliberate, methodical pace, with scenes often lingering longer than one might expect. This creates a sense of tension that builds gradually, allowing the audience to settle into the world before the next shocking twist occurs. The editing, like the cinematography, is precise and calculated, and it mirrors the film's thematic focus on control and order. The rhythms of the editing also emphasize the film's satirical nature, with sudden shifts in tone or unexpected cuts that disrupt the viewer's expectations. These moments of disorientation are meant to make the audience feel uncomfortable, as though they too are trapped in a world where nothing is as it seems. Perhaps the most interesting editing choice in the film is how the story is presented through the eyes of young Nicky Lodge. The film is told primarily from his perspective, and as the audience follows his journey, the editing reflects his confusion, fear, and growing awareness of the adult world around him. In the scenes where Nicky witnesses the violence and chaos erupting in the neighborhood, the editing is more fragmented, with quick cuts and disorienting shifts in perspective that mirror his disjointed understanding of the events. This choice effectively draws the viewer into Nicky's emotional experience, making the audience feel as though they too are witnessing the breakdown of the suburban ideal for the first time. Sound design and music are two of the most important elements in shaping the emotional experience of Suburbicon. The soundscape of the film is sparse and unsettling, with subtle background noises that punctuate moments of tension. The absence of sound in certain scenes, especially those of violence or betrayal, adds to the feeling of discomfort, forcing the audience to focus entirely on the actions taking place without any distraction. This minimalistic approach to sound design is a reflection of the film's larger focus on the inescapable nature of the characters' actions. No matter how silent or still the world may seem, the violence and corruption beneath the surface are always present, lurking just out of sight. The film's score, composed by Alexander Desplat, is another integral element that shapes its atmosphere. Desplat's score is at once whimsical and chilling, reflecting the duality of the film's tone. At times, the music is light and playful, almost whimsical, evoking a sense of 1950s nostalgia and Americana. But just as quickly, the score turns dark and menacing, signaling the shifting undercurrents of violence and moral collapse. The music mirrors the tension between the idealized world of suburban life and the brutal reality that lurks beneath. The juxtaposition of playful and sinister musical motifs creates a sense of unease, suggesting that beneath every pleasant exterior lies something far more dangerous. In particular, Desplat's use of strings, particularly in scenes of violence or moral decision-making, creates a haunting effect. The strings build slowly, their sharp, tense tones creeping into moments of quiet, almost mimicking the rising tension within the characters themselves. In scenes of domestic turmoil, such as when Gardner prepares to commit murder or when Rose engages in her morally questionable actions, the music becomes more discordant and chaotic, reflecting the internal turmoil of the characters and the crumbling facade of their suburban lives. Clooney's direction also contributes to the film's unique stylistic choices. His work here is restrained, yet incredibly deliberate. He doesn't rely on flashy camera work or fast-paced action sequences to tell the story. Instead, the emphasis is on small, meaningful moments, many of which involve long, lingering shots that give the audience a chance to take in every detail of the scene. This slow-burn approach to storytelling allows Clooney to explore the themes of the film in greater depth, while also creating a sense of discomfort. The longer shots and meticulous attention to detail in the framing of each scene give the audience a sense that they are being allowed to witness something intimate and personal, but also something deeply unsettling. The film's stylistic choices, particularly in terms of its visual storytelling, are a testament to Clooney's commitment to bringing the Coen brothers' script to life in a way that felt both fresh and deeply resonant with its themes. The film's color palette, lighting choices, camera angles, and editing all work in unison to create a sense of unease, drawing the audience into a world where the perfect suburban dream is slowly revealed to be a nightmare. The tension between the idealized American dream and the darkness beneath it is not only conveyed through the plot and performances, but through every visual and auditory choice made throughout the film. Ultimately, Suburbicon stands out for its masterful use of cinematic techniques that not only enhance the storytelling, but also deepen the impact of its social commentary. Through the skillful use of cinematography, editing, sound design, and music, Clooney and his team create a film that is as much a visual experience as it is a narrative one. The film's technical achievements serve the story, enhancing the themes of the film while also keeping the audience on edge, aware that beneath every gleaming surface lies a truth far more sinister. In Suburbicon, the cast's chemistry and the dynamics between the performers were integral to bringing the story's complexity and dark humor to life. Each actor, whether a lead or supporting character, played a pivotal role in weaving together the themes of the film, and the relationships they formed, both on-screen and off-screen, were essential in creating a cohesive, compelling narrative. Director George Clooney managed to draw out distinct performances that balanced both comedic and dramatic elements, and this was largely due to the way the cast interacted with each other, feeding off one another's energy, and building on their collective talent to tell a story that felt fresh and poignant. At the heart of Suburbicon is the family dynamic between the Lodge family, and the performances by Matt Damon, Gardner Lodge, and Julianne Moore, Rose Lodge, provide the core emotional drive of the film. From the moment they appear on screen together, their chemistry feels both comfortable and deeply uneasy. Their performances are carefully nuanced, capturing the internal contradictions that define their characters. Damon, who plays the seemingly mild-mannered father, Gardner, delivers a performance that is charming yet unsettling, perfectly embodying a character who hides his darkness behind a veneer of suburban normality. His chemistry with Julianne Moore, who portrays both Gardner's wife, Rose, and his sister-in-law, provides a sense of tension that grows as the story delves deeper into the family's sinister secrets. Damon and Moore's dynamic is key to making Suburbicon both engaging and unpredictable. On the surface, they seem to be a typical suburban couple, affectionate, polite, and seemingly happy. But as the layers of the story unfold, we see the fractures beneath their polished exteriors. Their interactions serve as an eerie counterpoint to the idyllic world around them, and the way they play off each other helps to maintain the film's tension. There is an underlying feeling of menace in every interaction they share, particularly in their more intimate scenes, where small details, a look, a word, a gesture, suggest that things are not as they seem. This dynamic deepens as their moral corruption becomes more pronounced, and their shared guilt in the crimes that unfold is palpable, pulling the viewer into the drama with every scene. Then there is young Noah Jupe, who plays Nicky Lodge, the Lodge family's son. Jupe's chemistry with the adult cast, particularly with Damon, is essential to the emotional core of the film. As the story progresses, Nicky's innocence and naivety become increasingly significant, and Jupe is able to embody these qualities with a maturity beyond his years. His bond with Damon's Gardner is layered with both trust and manipulation. Gardner's attempts to protect Nicky, while simultaneously leading him down a dark path, creates a tragic irony. The relationship between father and son becomes a microcosm of the greater dysfunction within the suburban environment. Jupe's ability to hold his own in scenes with the more seasoned actor speaks volumes about his performance, and the tenderness he brings to his role creates a poignant juxtaposition to the film's darker themes. Another standout performance comes from Oscar Isaac, who portrays the insurance investigator, Bud Cooper. Isaac's role is crucial in adding an extra layer of suspense and complexity to the film. As the investigator begins to uncover the cracks in the Lodge family's story, Isaac's interactions with Damon's Gardner shift from polite professionalism to something much more accusatory and pointed. Their scenes together are imbued with a sense of escalating tension, as Cooper begins to ask questions that challenge Gardner's carefully constructed facade. Isaac's performance is a perfect match for the film's satirical tone, charming yet undercut with a sense of impending doom. His interactions with Damon are electric, creating an engaging back and forth that serves as one of the film's most suspenseful narrative arcs. The chemistry between the cast members wasn't just a product of their talent. It was also shaped by the collaborative spirit on set. Clooney, a director with a deep understanding of the nuances of character and performance, was able to create an environment that encouraged the actors to explore their roles fully. Behind the scenes, Clooney worked closely with each of the performers to ensure that their characters' motivations were clear, even when those motivations were deeply flawed or morally ambiguous. This collaborative process contributed to the film's seamless blend of dark humor and drama, as the actors brought their own instincts and interpretations to the table. An interesting behind-the-scenes tidbit revolves around the role of Julianne Moore, who not only played the role of Rose but also her twin sister, Margaret. Clooney's decision to have Moore portray both characters added a layer of complexity to the narrative. Rose, the seemingly loving wife who becomes embroiled in a web of lies and betrayal, is contrasted with Margaret, whose presence brings additional tension and confusion. The fact that Moore had to differentiate between the two roles, while maintaining subtle connections between the characters, was a fascinating challenge. Moore's dual performance not only adds depth to her character, but also enhances the eerie sense of discomfort that permeates the entire film. Clooney and Moore worked closely to ensure that both characters were distinct yet related, creating an unsettling dynamic that plays into the film's themes of duality and deception. In addition to the cast's on-screen interactions, the production of Suburbicon was also shaped by the dynamics of the film's creative team. Clooney, known for his meticulous attention to detail, kept a close eye on every element of the film, from the costumes to the set design. The 1950s setting, which plays a crucial role in creating the film's atmosphere, was brought to life by the talented production team, who worked to recreate an authentic suburban neighborhood while infusing it with a sense of foreboding. The choice of filming locations, set design, and the careful placement of props all contributed to the eerie feeling that permeates the film. The set was almost like another character, one that reflected the tensions within the Lodge family and the broader societal commentary of the film. The seemingly perfect suburban backdrop became a symbol of the lies and hypocrisies that the characters embody. The film's setting also plays a crucial role in shaping audience reactions. Viewers entering Suburbicon with expectations of a lighthearted comedy or a typical thriller were often surprised by the film's bleakness and its unrelenting critique of suburban life. Critics were divided over the film's tone. Some praised the way it deftly balanced dark humor with social commentary, while others found it disjointed or too cynical. However, Suburbicon quickly gained attention for its audaciousness and its willingness to tackle uncomfortable subjects with a sense of humor that bordered on the absurd. The film's ability to keep audiences on edge, to unsettle them with its stark contrast between idealized Americana and moral decay, was one of the key elements that shaped its lasting impact.